We don't hire single moms. That's what he said, smiling like he'd just told a joke that only he found funny. At first, I thought I misheard him. Maybe he said single month? Or single moment? Something, anything, that wasn't that. But no. He looked right at me, eyes flicking to the simple gold chain around my neck, then back to my resume, his smirk widening just a little. It was so casual. Like the weather. I tried to steady my breathing. Excuse me? He leaned back in his chair, expensive leather, of course, and folded his arms. It's not personal, he said, in the tone men use when they're about to say something very personal. It's just, in this field, things move fast. Long hours. Unpredictable travel. We've learned single moms don't last long here. My face went hot. You mean people with kids? He shrugged. Let's not get political about it. That word, political, stuck in my head like a splinter. As if asking for basic respect was some kind of debate topic. I could feel every nerve in my body screaming to get out of that office. I'd spent an hour preparing for this interview, rehearsing talking points in front of my bathroom mirror, wearing a blazer I'd steamed twice to hide how secondhand it was. But standing there, across from this smug, manicured man, I just wanted to disappear. I made myself smile. Well, thank you for your time. He smiled back like he'd done me a favor. Good luck out there. I stood, shook his hand, it was limp and smug, just like his tone, and walked out of that glass office, heels clicking across the marble floor. My pulse was pounding so hard I could barely hear myself think. I could still see his smirk in my mind, like it had been burned onto the inside of my eyelids. The moment the elevator doors closed, my face crumpled. Not into tears, not yet. Just disbelief. The kind of disbelief that hurts. Outside, the wind off 6th Avenue hit me like a slap. It was early October, cold enough to sting, gray enough to match my mood. I walked 3 blocks before I realized I was holding my breath. I stopped at a coffee cart and ordered something I couldn't afford, just to feel normal. The vendor smiled and said, "Rough day?" I laughed a little too hard. Something like that. When I got home to our apartment in Queens, the one-bedroom I'd fought to keep after the divorce, I slipped off my shoes quietly so I wouldn't wake Ella. My daughter had fallen asleep on the couch, wrapped in the fuzzy blue blanket her grandmother gave her before moving to Florida. Her drawings were scattered on the floor, big lopsided hearts, stick figures holding hands. That sight always melted me. But tonight, it broke something open. I sat down beside her and just stared at those crayon hearts until my eyes blurred. We don't hire single moms. He said it like it was common sense. Like every mother should just step aside and let the world belong to people without kids, people who had flexibility. But I wasn't some fragile, unqualified intern. I was 29, with 7 years of solid experience, 2 promotions, and a master's degree I earned by writing essays after bedtime stories. I'd run projects, budgets, entire departments, all while raising a child. The last job I'd had, my boss called me the calm in the storm. And yet, none of that mattered the second he saw the word mother on my resume. 2 weeks earlier, life almost felt normal again. Ella and I had moved into this apartment just after my divorce from Kyle. It wasn't fancy, the kind of place where the pipes hissed when you turned on the shower and the neighbor's dog barked every night like it was his calling. But it was ours. For the first time, I could breathe without waiting for the next argument, the next slammed door. Ella was 6, a little hurricane of questions and glitter glue. She made me laugh every single day. "Mom," she asked once, "why do grown-ups always say I'm fine when they're not?" I'd smiled and told her, because sometimes we need to believe it first. She'd nodded, like she understood completely. She usually did. That night, while she colored at the kitchen table, I sat beside her, scrolling job boards. Every posting felt like a lifeline and a rejection at once. Every time I filled out another online form, I thought, this could be the one. The Dalton and Grant posting stood out. Senior Project Coordinator. Salary, solid. Benefits, real. The company, reputable, sleek, stable. I spent days preparing. Researched their leadership team, memorized their mission statement, even practiced my handshake. I went to bed the night before telling myself, tomorrow is a turning point. It was. Just not in the way I hoped. After the interview, I called my best friend Renee. She picked up before the first ring even finished. "Tell me it went great," she said. I swallowed hard. "He said they don't hire single moms." There was a pause. Then, he said what? Exactly that. Like it was normal. Renee cursed under her breath, then caught herself. "Dana, that's discrimination. You could report him." "I don't have proof," I said. "It's my word against his." "You think you're the first woman he said that to?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Because I already knew she was right. Somewhere deep in my gut, I knew I wasn't the first. Renee's voice softened. "You don't have to take this lying down. I need a job," I said quietly. "Not a war." But as I hung up, I realized it wasn't that simple. You can't unhear something like that. It festers. It echoes when you try to sleep. It crawls under your skin until you start replaying it over and over, wishing you'd said something, anything. The rejection email came 3 days later. A plain, 2-sentence template. "Thank you for your interest. We've decided to move forward with other candidates." No signature. No explanation. Just corporate dismissal disguised as courtesy. I stared at it so long my eyes hurt. Ella was playing on the rug beside me, humming to herself, braiding her doll's hair. I forced a smile every time she looked up. "Did you get the job, Mama?" "Not this one, sweetie." "Maybe the next one," she said, like it was the easiest thing in the world. Her faith in me was both beautiful and cruel. She didn't know that the rent was due next week. That the fridge was almost empty. That I was tired of pretending I had it under control. The next morning, I decided to distract us. I took Ella to her school's Halloween parade. She'd begged to be a butterfly, purple wings, sparkles, the whole deal. We made the costume together from old craft supplies and dollar store glitter. Watching her march across the playground with those crooked wings, waving like a little queen, I felt something shift inside me. That man in his glass office had no idea who I was. But I did. I was the mom who showed up. Who made magic out of nothing. Who could stretch $40 into a week of groceries and still find a way to make her daughter laugh. If he couldn't see my value, that wasn't my problem, it was his. But the more I thought about it, the angrier I got. Because he shouldn't be allowed to get away with it. That night, after Ella went to bed, I opened my laptop again, not to look for more jobs, but to look him up. Martin Clive, Dalton and Grant, VP of Operations. His professional headshot popped up first, smug smile, perfect hair, every pixel screaming privilege. I clicked through the company website, scanning his bio. Nothing personal, just the usual results-driven leader nonsense. Then I saw something that made my pulse quicken. A review thread on a job forum. One anonymous comment read, "Interviewed with a senior exec who made inappropriate remarks about family life. Felt discriminatory but couldn't prove it." Another said, "Toxic environment for working mothers. Beware." I stared at the screen for a long time, heart pounding. So it wasn't just me. The next day, I grabbed coffee with Renee and told her what I found. She listened, her expression tightening with every word. When I finished, she said, "You need to report him." "To who?" "HR will just sweep it under the rug." "Then don't go to HR." "What, then?" Renee leaned back. You remember my friend Mia? The journalist from the Tribune? I nodded slowly. She's been looking for stories about gender bias in hiring. You could tell her what happened. Anonymously if you want. The idea scared me. My stomach twisted just thinking about it. But beneath that fear, something else flickered, resolve. Because maybe this wasn't just about one interview anymore. Maybe this was about every woman who got written off for the same reason. I didn't answer her right away. I just stirred my coffee and watched the phone collapse. Renee smiled knowingly. You're thinking about it. I'm thinking about a lot of things. That night, as I tucked Ella into bed, she looked up at me with her sleepy eyes and said, Mom, you're brave. I laughed softly. What makes you say that? You don't cry when people are mean. I kissed her forehead and whispered, Sometimes I do, baby. Just not where they can see it. As I sat there in the dark beside her, the city sounds humming outside, I made myself a promise. I might not win every battle. But I would never let anyone make me feel small again, not for being a mother, not for being divorced, not for being me. A few days later, I went to a networking event downtown. I almost didn't go, I was tired, the babysitter was late, my shoes pinched. But I needed to show up somewhere that didn't remind me of failure. I stood near the bar, nursing a club soda, when I heard it, two men in suits laughing behind me. Guess HR's gonna love this one of them said. The VP tossed another single mom today. The other laughed. Good for him. Saves us all a headache. My hand froze around my glass. I turned just enough to see their name tags, Dalton and Grant. I didn't say a word. I just watched them walk away, laughing, confident, untouchable. But in that moment, I knew exactly what I had to do. This wasn't about rejection anymore. It was about accountability. And I was done being quiet. I didn't apply to another job that week, or the next. I told myself I needed a break, a small pause to clear my head, but deep down, I knew that wasn't the full truth. I stopped checking LinkedIn, silenced the job alerts, ignored well-meaning messages from old coworkers, and let my inbox fill up with unread newsletters promising career comeback strategies. I'd had enough of strategies. Enough of pretending to fit into rooms that weren't built for me. So I stepped back. To anyone watching, it probably looked like I had given up. But I hadn't. I was retreating the way a tide retreats before it hits back harder. And while everyone thought I was fading, I was paying attention, to the news, to the conversations I overheard at the coffee shop, to the people the world rewarded for saying nothing. The first time I saw his name again, it was on a LinkedIn announcement. Congratulations to Martin Clive, newly promoted to Senior VP of Strategic Development. The photo was textbook corporate smugness, polished suit, self-satisfied grin, surrounded by people clinking glasses in a sleek Manhattan office. The caption was full of words like visionary and dynamic leader. My stomach turned. I recognized the same fake warmth he'd shown me across that desk, the same easy charm that hid the arrogance underneath. I stared at the photo longer than I meant to, scrolling through the comments. So many congratulations, so many praises from people I'd once respected. For a moment, I almost deleted my account entirely. But instead, I quietly saved the post to a private folder and shut my laptop. People like him relied on women like me to disappear quietly. I decided that day that I would let him think I had. The following Monday, I went with Ella to her school's fall festival. The air smelled like cider and popcorn, and the laughter of children floated above the crowd. I painted faces at the volunteer booth, pretending my smile was genuine, while inside I felt like I was made of glass. One of the other moms, polished, chatty, married, asked what I did for work, and I hesitated. I didn't want to say freelancer again, didn't want to watch her polite nod that said, oh, unemployed. So I told her the truth. I'm taking a break for a while. She smiled, but it was the kind of smile people give you when they think you're lost. That night, as Ella slept in the next room, I stared out our apartment window and thought about how many people assumed a woman's worth was tied to who she worked for. And I made another promise to myself, that when I came back, it wouldn't be to beg for a seat at someone else's table. Renee called me 2 nights later, her voice sharp with curiosity. Okay, I've been patient, but I need to know what's going on. You went off the grid. Are you okay? I laughed softly. Yeah, I'm fine. Just taking space. She wasn't convinced. You don't take space, Dana. You take notes. So what are you doing, really? I folded a blanket on the couch and pretended not to smile. Just breathing. Renee sighed, that long exhale she did when she knew I was being evasive. You remember my journalist friend Mia? She's doing that piece on gender bias in hiring. I mentioned your story anonymously, and she said she's been getting similar leads. You might not be the only one he's done this to. I froze. What do you mean, similar leads? Other women, she said. Different departments, same guy. Same pattern. My pulse kicked up. You're serious? Dead serious. She's not publishing yet, she's verifying. But I think you should talk to her. I didn't answer right away. I just sat there, watching the city lights flicker across the floor, feeling something heavy and electric settle in my chest. The next morning, I told myself I'd think about it later. I walked Ella to school, bought groceries, and stopped for coffee at the corner cafe. It was one of those tiny places with barely enough room for 3 tables, where the barista always spelled my name wrong no matter how many times I repeated it. While I waited for my order, 2 men at the next table were talking loudly about a client meeting. I wasn't paying attention, not until I heard the name Dalton and Grant. My head turned before I could stop myself. One of the men was older, graying, with an easy laugh. The other was maybe early 30s, nervously trying to impress him. The older one said, "You should have seen Clive in that meeting, smooth as ever. Closed the deal like it was nothing." The younger man chuckled. "I've heard stories about him. A real shark, right?" "Oh yeah," the older one said. "But he knows how to handle people. Keeps the riffraff out." My hand tightened around the coffee cup. The riffraff. I wondered how many women had been filed under that word in his head. When they left, I sat there long after my drink went cold, replaying every word. That evening, I called Renee again. "If I talk to Mia, it stays anonymous," I said. "I don't want my name out there." She agreed immediately. "Of course. I'll set it up. She'll listen, no pressure." I hesitated before adding, "Renee, you said there were other women?" "Yes," she said quietly. "And some of them lost more than just a job." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "One woman got blacklisted in the industry after filing a complaint. Another left the city altogether. It's bad, Dana. It's really bad." For a moment, I didn't say anything. I could feel that same familiar fury building in my throat, not just for myself now, but for them. "Then he picked the wrong woman this time," I said finally. Renee was silent for a beat before responding, "That's the Dana I remember." Still, I didn't rush. I knew instinctively that I couldn't move too fast. Instead, I started rebuilding quietly. I updated my portfolio, reorganized my files, pulled together old project data and credentials. I even enrolled in a short online course about workplace compliance, which I took at night after Ella went to sleep. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave me something new to focus on, and, secretly, it gave me language. Words like disparate treatment and pattern of bias that would come in handy later. I didn't tell Renee or Mia about that part. I just let them think I was trying to move on. Around that time, Martin's name popped up again. Not on LinkedIn this time, but in a business newsletter I subscribed to. There was a small profile piece about his leadership philosophy. I read every word, not because I cared, but because I wanted to know how he sold himself to the world. A strong team starts with the right people, he said in the interview. You can train skill, but you can't train reliability. That word, reliability, made my skin crawl. He used it the same way he'd used it in my interview, as a shield for prejudice. The article included a photo of him at some charity gala, glass in hand, surrounded by other executives. And there it was again, that smile. The one that said he believed he was untouchable. That weekend, Renee invited me out for dinner, saying I needed adult energy. I almost declined, but Ella's babysitter was free, so I went. Halfway through the meal, Renee leaned across the table and said, "You know, Mia's looking into his contracts. There might be discrepancies in the numbers. Bonuses he pushed through that don't add up." I blinked. Financial discrepancies? Yep. Turns out Martin's got a reputation for being creative with company budgets. Nothing proven yet, but Mia's digging. I felt my heart rate slow in that strange, steady way it does right before something changes. You think they'd go after him for that? Corporate cares about money more than morals, Renee said. If he's been cooking the books, they'll throw him to the wolves. I smiled faintly. Then maybe that's the language they'll understand. A few days later, I stopped by Ella's school again to drop off supplies for a class art project. On my way out, I bumped into one of the other mothers, a woman named Janine who worked in HR for a mid-sized tech company. She asked how things were going, and I gave her the usual vague answer. Then she said, "You know, we're actually looking for consultants to review bias training materials. Pays decently. You'd be great at it." I froze, not because of the offer, but because of what it represented. That small window, that one sentence, showed me there were places that actually wanted voices like mine. I thanked her and took her card. I didn't call her right away, but I kept that card on the fridge, right next to Ella's butterfly drawing. It reminded me that power didn't just exist in offices like Martin's. It existed in every conversation, every choice to speak up or stay silent. Weeks passed, and my quiet life became its own cover. I went to therapy, took Ella to the park, and cooked simple dinners. People stopped asking about work. They assumed I had accepted my new normal, that I was content living small. What they didn't see were the notes I was taking, the names I was writing down, the stories I was connecting. Mia called me one evening to say she was moving forward with her piece. "You're not the only one," she said softly. "There are 5 women now. Different departments, same man, same pattern." I felt something inside me go still. "Are you naming him?" I asked. "Not yet. We're verifying. But once we do, I'll need someone to confirm." I hesitated. "You'll have someone." And then, the moment I didn't expect happened. It was late afternoon, drizzling, and I was leaving the grocery store with Ella. We were waiting for the crosswalk light when I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Come on, just email me the numbers. I'll handle it Monday." I turned slightly, and there he was, Martin. He was holding a phone to his ear, briefcase in hand, expensive coat perfectly pressed, hair slick from the rain. He was laughing, that same loud, careless laugh I remembered. He didn't see me. Why would he? To him, I was nobody. I stood perfectly still, watching him cross the street, talking animatedly into the phone. At one point, I heard him say, "I told HR to quit hiring liabilities, I don't need another mess." My blood ran cold. Liabilities. That was what women like me were to him. Not employees. Not people. Just risks to be avoided. I watched him until he disappeared around the corner, my heart steady, my hands gripping the grocery bag so tightly the paper tore. Ella tugged my sleeve. "Mom, are you okay?" I looked down at her and smiled faintly. "Yeah, baby. I'm more than okay." She tilted her head, not understanding, but she smiled back. That night, after she fell asleep, I sat at the kitchen table and opened my laptop. I pulled up Mia's email, typed 2 words, and hit send. "Let's talk." And as I sat there in the soft glow of the screen, I realized something I hadn't understood before. I hadn't disappeared. I'd been waiting. Quiet doesn't mean weak. Silence can be strategy. And Martin, for all his arrogance, had no idea how close his world was to crumbling. The email arrived because someone hadn't updated a distribution list. That's what I figured out later. Back when I did contract compliance work for Dalton and Grant's media arm, I was automatically looped into their training material reviews, mostly dull PDFs about code of conduct and onboarding. I hadn't been active on that thread in over a year, but apparently, whoever forwarded the file didn't notice my name still lingered in the group alias. That tiny oversight sent me an internal draft marked confidential, a revised DEI training manual with a spreadsheet of historical edits. It landed in my inbox with no warning, while I was helping Ella with a shoebox diorama about butterflies. My eye skimmed the subject line and froze. When I opened the attachment, my breath caught in my chest. The file included budget notes, email authorizations, and a revision tracker, and all over that document, one name kept appearing in the approval fields like a watermark: M. Clive. The newest changes had removed 3 entire modules on inclusive hiring practices. And the attached justification? Not a priority for this fiscal year. That line was flagged by someone from HR, who'd commented, "Concerned this contradicts external messaging. Legal review needed?" But the trail stopped there. It hadn't been reviewed. It had been pushed through. I didn't respond. I didn't download it or forward it to anyone. I screenshotted the comment thread, encrypted it into a private vault, and quietly removed my name from the thread before anyone noticed. I sat there for a while after that, watching Ella glue a plastic wing onto cardboard, her brow furrowed in intense concentration. She was so small, so focused, so full of belief that the world was fair, that people followed rules and did the right thing. I remember thinking, if I don't follow this thread, I'm teaching her it's okay to be erased. 2 days later, I met Mia at a bookstore cafe, the same quiet place we'd used before. The smell of old books and bitter espresso clung to the air like something sacred. She wore a navy trench coat, hair pulled back in a low knot, eyes as sharp as ever. She didn't waste time with small talk. "You said you had something?" I slid my laptop across the table and opened the screenshot. She read in silence, scrolling slowly, her lips pressed into a thin line. Then she leaned back and exhaled. "They removed inclusive hiring from the training modules?" I nodded. "And no one stopped it?" "Martin approved this?" "Every field." She sat with it for a moment, and then something softened in her face, not pity, but resolve. "I hate that this still surprises me," she said. "I had a job offer pulled when I was 6 months pregnant. They said the position was suspended, but then they posted it again 3 weeks later." I looked at her differently then, not as a reporter, but as someone who'd been through the same quiet dismissal. "You ever write about it?" I asked. "No one wanted that version of the story," she said. "They only wanted stories with heroes or settlements. I had neither." I nodded slowly. "Then let's give them a different version." Her expression changed, something clicked into place behind her eyes. "Okay," she said. "But we need more than this. We need a pattern. Not just hearsay, but documents, dates, women, history." "I'm working on it," I said. "And I think I know where to look." Over the next 2 weeks, I built a quiet archive. I reached out to women I'd met years earlier, consultants, project leads, freelancers who'd passed through Dalton and Grant's revolving doors. One of them, Elise, remembered me from a panel on gender equity. When we met for coffee, she barely sat down before saying, "I still remember what he said to me." I had just mentioned my 3-year-old, and he smiled and said, "We've had bad luck with moms sticking around." No offense. Her voice cracked a little at the memory, but she covered it quickly. I didn't report it. I needed the paycheck. I nodded without judgment. You're not alone. Then there was Naomi, who'd been hired as a project coordinator, until, she said, her child got sick during her first month. I missed 2 days, she told me, stirring her tea slowly. And suddenly my name was off the project calendar. No explanation. I went to HR and they told me my position was in transition. She laughed bitterly. What does that even mean? I was erased. Would you talk to Mia? I asked. She hesitated, then said, if it helps someone else avoid this, yeah. I will. Not every woman was willing. Some didn't want their names anywhere near it, and I understood. But every voice added weight. Every story made the wall around Martin a little thinner. Then came a more unexpected source, Mark, a former IT analyst who'd briefly worked under Martin's division before going freelance. I remembered him from a digital infrastructure project we'd both staffed. He'd always had a blunt honesty I liked. When I emailed him out of the blue, he replied within an hour. Dana Morgan, he wrote, thought you escaped that circus. I responded, trying to finish what I started. When we met in a quiet corner of a co-working space, he raised an eyebrow and said, let me guess. This is about Martin. You knew? I asked. Everyone knew, he said. He wasn't subtle. Especially after hours. He told me about a Slack thread that had circulated after a woman from operations was suddenly let go. She had twins, Mark said. She was good at her job. Then poof, gone. The rumor was she made a complaint about something he said. Do you have the thread? I asked. I saved it. I don't delete anything. He emailed it to me later that night. It was exactly what I hoped and feared. The conversation was between 2 junior staffers, reacting to the woman's departure. One wrote, Clive said to her face, you should be home with your kids. The reply came fast, unreal. This place is a lawsuit waiting to happen. I sent it to Mia the next morning. She called me by lunch. This changes everything, she said. We're going to run it. Around that time, Martin started making more public appearances, and not just in articles or panels. He became a regular guest on a podcast about leadership in the digital age, spouting off platitudes like the right hire can make or break a brand, and consistency is more valuable than credentials. In one episode, he was asked about diversity, and he actually said, I believe in hiring for performance, not politics. I watched the clip with a frozen expression. That was his whole worldview, compressed into a soundbite, policies designed to exclude, disguised as neutral logic. But the moment that truly made my blood boil came unexpectedly. I had taken Ella to a Saturday library workshop, and afterward we walked down to the park near Columbus Circle. It was a sunny afternoon, crisp with autumn air, and I let her run ahead while I scrolled through my phone. That's when I saw him. Martin. Standing near the fountain, laughing with 2 other men in suits. One of them I recognized from LinkedIn, a managing partner at Dalton. I tucked behind a tree without thinking, watching. Martin gestured animatedly as he spoke, and though I couldn't hear every word, I caught enough. She was one of those single mom types. You know the kind. Always needing flexibility. Not built for the hustle. It hit me in the gut, not just because of what he said, but because he said it so casually. Like it was nothing. Like I was nothing. I had to remind myself to breathe. He didn't see me. I pulled Ella close and told her we were leaving early. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the living room with my laptop open and stared at the files I'd collected, the Slack thread, the hiring edits, the personal testimonies, the screenshots, the audio clips Mia had gathered from old webinars. It wasn't just a pattern. It was a blueprint of bias, etched into the walls of a company that had allowed it, maybe even encouraged it. Mia texted me at 11:12 p.m. We go live Monday morning. Final draft's done. Want to see it? I opened the document in silence. The headline read, "The Resume Gap, How Dalton and Grant Systematically Derailed Working Mothers, and Protected a Rising Star." My name wasn't mentioned. But my story was there. So were Elisa's. Naomi's. Even the IT guy's anonymous notes made it in. And at the bottom, in bold, Dalton and Grant declined to comment. Martin Clive did not respond to multiple requests. I sat there a long time, then opened a scheduling tool Mia had shared with me. She'd said it was helpful if I ever wanted to drop something into the press queue on social. I'd saved a statement I'd written weeks ago, short, clear, nothing inflammatory. Just the truth. For every qualified woman who was told she wasn't reliable enough, I hope this story finds you. You weren't the problem. I uploaded the message. Scheduled it for 9 a.m. Monday. As I closed the laptop, I heard the soft sound of Ella turning over in bed, and I walked into her room to watch her sleep. She looked peaceful, unburdened. And for the first time in a long while, so did I. He was giving a keynote speech about resilient leadership when the story dropped. Mia told me later that the timing couldn't have been better, or worse, depending on your point of view. He had just walked on stage at a downtown business conference, all smiles and charm, when someone in the audience's phone lit up with a news alert from the Tribune. Within minutes, whispers rippled through the crowd. Screens began to glow. Heads turned. Cameras rose. And Martin Clive, Dalton and Grant's golden boy, stood there in a suit worth more than my rent, realizing that the spotlight he loved so much had finally turned against him. Back at home, I watched it unfold from my kitchen counter, the article headline sitting bold and sharp on my laptop screen, exclusive, Dalton and Grant VP accused of discrimination against working mothers. The photographs of Dalton's glass office tower sat just below the headline, looking sterile and expensive, exactly as I remembered it. I didn't feel triumphant, not yet. I just felt still, the kind of stillness that comes when something inside you settles back into place after being knocked loose for too long. By noon, the internet had done what it always does. The story spread. People pulled old panel photos, LinkedIn posts, podcast clips. Screenshots of Martin's corporate quotes started circulating next to the women's testimonies Mia had included. The contrast was almost cinematic, his smooth statements about merit-based hiring beside the Slack message where he'd written off a mother of twins as a bad bet. I knew it wasn't just the facts that were sinking him. It was the arrogance, the carelessness, the way he'd underestimated everyone around him, including me. Around 2 o'clock, I got the call. I didn't recognize the number, but something in me knew before I even answered. Dana. His voice. Controlled, but not calm. That same practiced tone from our interview, but thinner now, cracking at the edges. Yes? You saw it, he said. Not a question. I did. He took a breath, then another, like he was choosing every word carefully. You don't understand what this is doing. This isn't just about me. There are people's livelihoods tied to this. Investors. Families. You're hurting everyone by. I'm not hurting anyone, Martin, I said, keeping my voice even. You did that when you decided mothers weren't worth hiring. Come on, he said, almost scoffing. That's not what I said. You're twisting it. I don't have to twist it, I said quietly. You said it all by yourself. He exhaled hard into the phone. If you're smart, you'll stay quiet now. This thing is going to get messy. And when it does, people who helped push it will get dragged down too. I let a small silence stretch, just long enough to make him think I was considering it. Then I said, you should probably call your lawyer, Martin. And I hung up. The rush didn't come right away. It arrived slowly, like heat building under the surface. For months, he'd talked over me, dismissed me, underestimated me. And now, for the first time, he had to listen to my silence. That evening, Dalton and Grant released their official statement. Effective immediately, Martin Clive has been placed on administrative leave pending a third-party investigation. I read it twice, marveling at the corporate poetry of it. Placed on administrative leave. The polite way of saying we're cutting you loose before the fire spreads. Renee called right after. He's gone, she said, breathless. They scrubbed his profile off the company site. It's like he never existed. He'll exist again somewhere, I said. Maybe, she replied. But not like this. Not as the guy who got away with it. Mia texted me around midnight, Tribune just hit 2 million reads. 2 other outlets picked it up. Sleep well tonight. I didn't sleep. Not out of stress, but out of something sharper, the electricity of finally being seen. I scrolled through the flood of comments. Some were angry, some were grateful, some were heartbreaking. One stuck with me. I quit my job after my boss told me kids are your career now. I thought I was overreacting. Thank you for reminding me I wasn't. That was the moment I realized the story wasn't about taking something from Martin. It was about giving something back to women who had been told the same lie, that motherhood and ambition were opposites. A few days later, while I was out grocery shopping, I got another call. This one from a woman named Clara Walsh. Her voice was steady and warm, professional but approachable. Dana Morgan, she asked. I'm hoping you'll take a few minutes to talk. I head strategy for a firm in Brooklyn. We're building a new consultancy on equitable hiring practices. I came across your work, and I was moved by your perspective in that Tribune story. I hesitated, caught between curiosity and suspicion. You read the article? I read it twice, she said. And then I looked you up. You ran compliance for Dalton's media branch, right? I did, I said cautiously. We could use someone like you. Someone who's lived this, and understands how to fix it. If you're open to a conversation, I'd like to meet. It wasn't an instant fairy tale offer. She wasn't dangling promises or pretending to save me. She just sounded like someone who meant it. I told her I'd think about it. That night, I found myself replaying her words in my head while washing dishes, the warm water running over my hands. I didn't tell anyone yet, not Renee, not Mia, because I didn't want to jinx it. I just wanted to sit with the idea that maybe, after all this, something new could grow in the ashes. The next morning, I met Clara in person at a small cafe in Park Slope. She was in her mid-40s, with silver streaks in her hair and the kind of presence that filled a room without needing to raise her voice. She ordered tea, not coffee. We're not looking for perfect resumes, she said, stirring her drink. We're looking for truth-tellers. The kind of people who've had to rebuild. I leaned back, studying her face. You don't think what happened will make me a liability? She smiled faintly. No. I think it makes you an expert. I laughed softly, shaking my head. That's one way to put it. She slid a folder across the table, a short proposal, a role outline, pay rate, benefits. It was generous. Fair. Respectful. But I didn't sign anything right away. I asked questions, about flexibility, about caregivers, about culture. She answered every one without hesitation. When we stood up to leave, she said, you don't have to decide now. Just know there's a place that doesn't see motherhood as a risk factor. Walking home, I realized something I hadn't before. Revenge hadn't just been about taking down a man. It had been about changing the rules of the game, even if just a little, for whoever came next. 3 days later, I accepted. When I told Renee, she screamed so loudly through the phone I had to pull it away from my ear. Double pay? She shouted. You're telling me the woman they called a liability just got double pay? I couldn't help laughing. It feels poetic, doesn't it? It feels earned, she said. And you better frame that offer letter. That evening, I printed it out. Not for vanity, for proof. Proof that being underestimated isn't the same as being unworthy. After dinner, while Ella and I were building with her magnetic tiles, she looked up at me with that same sharp curiosity she always had. Mom, did that man get in trouble? I paused, trying to decide how much of the truth to give her. Yes, I said carefully. He lost his job. She frowned. Good. He was mean. I smiled. He was wrong. There's a difference. She tilted her head, thinking. But you got a new job, right? So you won? I laughed softly. Something like that. She pushed a few tiles together, then said, Can I come to your new office one day? Maybe, I said. If they have snacks. She grinned. You should bring the one with chocolate. I laughed, and in that moment, the tightness in my chest that had lived there for months finally eased. I realized that this, her laughter, our peace, our shared small future, was the real ending. Not the article. Not the offer. Not Martin's fall. It was the knowledge that I'd built something solid from the wreckage. A week later, out of pure curiosity, I checked Dalton and Grant's website. His profile was gone, replaced by a new headshot, a woman I didn't know, listed as interim VP. The caption under her photo read, Committed to inclusive leadership and equitable growth. I stared at it for a long moment, then smiled. Maybe someone like her had been waiting in the wings all along. Before closing the page, I clicked back to that old saved folder, the LinkedIn post from the day he'd said they don't hire single moms. I deleted it. Not out of anger, but release. Then I opened my inbox, pulled up Clara's contract, and signed it electronically. When the confirmation message appeared, I whispered quietly to myself, they thought they erased me. All they did was hand me the pen. And I meant every word,